Whenever we hear or read about other people, our empathy takes over. Us humans have the everlasting desire to think or even feel for others.
So, whenever we see, hear, or read about someone, our thoughts and feelings travel to a world of imagination.
And we do it all the time, when imagining to be a superhero, a construction worker, or even a guy on the street. But what if a person is somewhat out of the ordinary?
Have you ever wondered what it would be like to be them? Well, we certainly have.
With this podcast series, we unravel stories of the sometimes fascinating, obsessed, inspiring, or outright strange folks that have wandered the edges of this earth. So, who this? Welcome to our podcast.
You know the saying, liars never prosper? Well, what if that's a lie? Tune into today's episode. Today, we're telling the story of Gregor MacGregor, a Scottish soldier, adventurer, trickster, and pathological liar. A natural charm who was responsible for perhaps the biggest scam the world has ever seen. Young Gregor was born in 1786 into high Scottish nobility and grew up in an adventurous family, with his grandfather being a famous clansman and soldier and his father a sea captain. Fast forward to 1803, when he was only 16 years old. Gregor's adventurous genes started acting up, so he joined the British Army. This was the year the Napoleonic Wars started, and Gregor was posted on the island of Guernsey to defend against the French invasion. An invasion that never came. So far for his adventurous life, he must have thought. But in this period, he did find his first wife, Maria Bowater. Maria was quite the catch, coming from an ultra-rich family of politicians and high-ranking military officers. Still desperate for adventure, he decided to buy himself the rank of captain. Because, why work for a promotion, right? And was transferred to Gibraltar, where he had to wait 4 years for a French fleet that never came. Again, bored, he almost left. Until Napoleon started the Peninsular Wars in Spain and Portugal in 1809. Gregor quickly found himself fighting Napoleon's forces in Portugal, but you guessed it, this was again too boring for young Gregor. In 1810, the 24-year-old Gregor sold his captain's rank to return home. Perhaps his boredom led to this very moment, but he started telling everyone that he had been knighted for his service and was now to be called Sir MacGregor, which was, well, a lie. No one even questioned him, and he found out how easy lying actually was.
I don't know, he's thrifty. But also, how do you buy an officer's title? That kind of piqued my interest. Like, how the heck did this guy... How can you even do that to begin with?
Rich people get away with everything, right, Joe? I think it was something like $900 that it cost him to buy the title. And having an ultra-rich family now, that was easy.
Yeah. What my question would be is, why would this man not be satisfied with all that was going on in his life? And I wonder, and as I always wonder, if something happened in somebody's family that causes them to act a certain way. It's almost like he was trying to be something because somehow he's trying to fill something that he didn't think he was able to fill. Like trying to catch up probably to his own family's expectations, or probably trying to catch up with some of the people in the circles that he runs with in terms of what they probably are doing with their own lives. And so he probably is doing all of these things. There's a lot of probably I'm using.
No, for
but
sure.
It begs the question why somebody, after doing so much, still felt like they had to purchase titles and then lie about being something that they're not you were something important already.
I have a bit of a theory. Supposedly there's not much on his early childhood, but there's a family history, right? Because he's from the clan MacGregor, who were some Roman Catholics up, in the north of Scotland, which famously was not friendly to Catholics. But no, there's bits about them losing their titles and being ostracized legally and not being allowed to use their last name or their title or their heritage. And his dad died fairly early on. So to me, it sounds like someone who didn't trust in the system, didn't care about the system, because your family has been spit out by the system, let's say. So if I was him and I was like, how can I game this? I'll do it because I don't care for it. Like, I'll buy a title, I'll become an officer. This doesn't mean nothing to me.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's more as family of in-laws. So the father of Maria Bowater was actually an admiral. So he was really high up, and she had family who were politicians, so members of parliament. It could have been that he was trying to prove that he was worth something to them. Because it's written in the records that his family of in-laws actually didn't like him much.
Oh yeah, I bet.
And did you say why they didn't like him? Was it because of where he was from, or was it because of who he was in their presence? Do you know?
I mean, I think in their eyes he wasn't as high-born as they were, right? He was from Scottish nobility, but what does that mean in English society, right?
True. Yeah.
Yeah. Also an ostracized family.
True.
Yes, and he knows what it means to like have something and then have it all taken away. Probably he's just never feeling secure, right?
Yeah.
And so he's in this space and never feeling secure. So he's like, the only way I can secure myself is to scheme and keep becoming more, because going backward is not an option.
Yeah. Or someone was asking him, "Hey, so what did you accomplish in this your conquest?"
Yeah.
And then he probably felt the urge to brag a bit, and then maybe that bragging got a little bit out of control, out of hand.
So what happens next?
So in 1811, his wife actually passed away, and his in-laws cut him off financially. So seeking for a new adventure, Gregor traveled to Venezuela, where the war for independence had just started. So shortly after his arrival, he managed to get the position of cavalry officer, and he made a big name by marrying Josefa Antonia Andrea Aristegueta y Llovera, the cousin of the famous Simon Bolivar. I don't really know how he managed to do that, but as I said, he was very charming, and he was able to get into Venezuela high society relatively quickly. So the following years, he found himself struggling to stay alive as the Spanish beat down Republican forces. By 1816, Venezuela was almost completely under control of the Spanish royalists. Being reconnected with Bolivar and his following, Gregor found himself on a campaign to land in Venezuela and coordinate a mass uprising. So Gregor was put in charge of 600 troops and was dropped in Ocumare. The campaign quickly went sideways and Bolivar fled. Gregor and his troops were trapped in the royalist territory. So they were 300 kilometers from the nearest Republican stronghold with almost no supplies. So this was the moment that MacGregor showed immense courage and a brilliant strategic mind. Having to travel 300 kilometers, he was able to fend off all of the enemies in very smart ways, tricking them into the swamps. And fight after fight, he managed to progress towards the Republican stronghold. And he actually managed to do it. So he brought his men to safety, and he was celebrated as a hero. So overnight, Gregor MacGregor became a hero amongst the Republicans. And Bolivar even awarded him the Order of the Libertador. But Gregor being Gregor, wasn't really impressed by that. Where was his promotion?
Because he didn't buy it, that's why. It's like, where's my $900? Asked Bolivar.
Yeah. Maybe that to him is just like moving sideways. Like, oh, sure. I have a title. I have a title back in Scotland. Don't give me more titles. I want position.
Don't give me more titles.
Yeah, give me position.
You're not even a country yet.
Yeah.
What's this title, buddy?
I feel like this. He was a little bit insecure as well, right? He seemed to be doing the same thing, where apparently he was trying to find some acknowledgement for the things that he'd done with people that he cared about, because Simon Bolivar seemed to be a person that he cared about, or at least wanted to be acknowledged by.
Yes, but he wanted a certain type of acknowledgement, right? I think he doesn't want to just be, oh, you did a good job, boom, here. He wanted to kind of be side by side somehow with Simon Bolivar in terms of position, as I said before. And I think he realized that just giving me a pat on the back is not enough for me. I need to be standing side by side. Maybe he thought he was going to make him
Yeah.
co-founder or whatever of this new, because he did such a great job, no? Maybe.
Yeah, MacGregorlandia.
I mean, there wasn't really much else that Simon Bolivar probably could have given him, but he missed something. So in the years that followed, Gregor organized 3 private invasions by tricking many mercenaries to follow him with the prospect of plenty of fake land, because he didn't own the land. And the story was basically always the same. He managed to capture a city. We're talking about Spanish Florida, Panama, and Venezuela. He captures a city, doesn't proceed with capturing anything else. He chills, and he started drinking rum. He didn't put up any defenses for any counterattack that could have taken place, so he just chilled. And when things gone sideways, and they've always had, he ran off, leaving his mercenaries to their fate.
Yikes. Yeah, that's a different level of selfishness there.
It's also
Sounds like most politicians today, actually.
Yeah.
it's completely different from what he's done before, right? Apparently, if he's in a situation where he could perish, he goes all the way to survive. In this case, he just fled the scene. And in the last instance, when he was taking the town in Venezuela, he fled the scene, and all his men that remained were executed by the Spanish forces.
Oh, wow.
So that puts a lot of blood on his hands. And Simon Bolivar actually saw that. So when he heard about all the different instances, he got very frustrated and angry at his cousin-in-law. Infuriated, Bolivar ordered a decree in 1819 for any Venezuelan to kill MacGregor on sight. So with that, Gregor was on the move again.
Okay.
What a G.
G. It depends on what G stands for.
Goner.
Gregor. Goner. Yeah.
This was a situation where something crucial happened. So in 1820, Gregor vanished into the mangrove forest of Mosquito Shore. That will be the coast of modern-day Nicaragua and Honduras. A wet and hot place full of hungry mosquitoes. But probably better than being dead, right? Because he was on a hit list of the Spanish, the British, Simon Bolivar, every single Venezuelan because of Simon Bolivar. So he had to find a place where nobody would be able to find him. So while he was in hiding here, he met a local tribal leader whom he spent a few days partying with. And after those few days, as that goes, he found himself stealing a title deed of 8 million acres of tribal land. Oops. So he now had the perfect excuse to come up with the scheme that he is known for. So he made his way to London, where he presented himself as Highness Gregor MacGregor, the first sovereign prince of the state of Poyais. Poyais?
I would say
Poyais.
Poyais or Puy. I don't know. Do you think he was fancy and he was like, this is French, so it's Puy? I don't know.
It could be.
I would say, like, from how it's written, I would say Poyais.
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 Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he made his way to London, where he presented himself as the Highness Gregor MacGregor, the first sovereign prince of the state of Poyais. And again, no one questioned it. Sure, many nations were popping up these days, countries that people never even heard about. So it made sense that people would believe that Poyais could very well be one of them.
I find this very hilarious. And I'm telling you why. Because he had a deed to tribal land. How you get a deed to tribal land?
You mean famously where they don't have deeds.
Right. So you have to ask yourself, like, the person who had the deed to the land, to me it seems like that guy probably robbed the tribals of their land, and then he just got robbed of his title to this.
Yeah.
It's
For
just
sure.
poetic justice in my mind.
Yeah.
And now he's going to a colonial power and fooling them, people who rob and steal to get what they need, and then he goes to them and then he's conning and scamming them. I don't know. I see the man as a little bit of a hero, although he's a little bit of an asshole, a scoundrel.
A scoundrel.
Scoundrel, yeah. Yeah, and I think in many ways he was, because what happened after was mind-blowing. So he made up this story of Poyais that was unbelievable, that was sort of a utopian nation where everyone wanted to live. So what he did, he published a guidebook to Poyais under the pseudonym name Thomas Strangeways. And in many
Strange ways.
it was very strange.
That's not made up at all. Listen to the name. That was strange ways. Okay.
It's actually pronounced as strange way.
Oh, nice.
You know?
Oh, yeah, yes. Now it sounds
Now
legit.
it makes sense, yeah. No, so he wrote this and he described this wonderful nation where their lands were extremely fertile, rivers were filled with gold, and there was a complete lack of tropical diseases that many of the Latin American countries were known for in Europe. He started convincing the Scottish community to settle in Poyais and sold lots of lands in the process. So it sounded too good to be true, so why could anyone refuse?
As someone, from Nicaragua, I find this hilarious. Because if you know, like Bluefields, first of all, it's like on the East Coast, it's like funded by some like English pirates or something. So like it already has that sort of like rackety old history of just like anything goes, but just the idea that like the rivers are filled with gold and it's like a paradise. It's like
not.
mate, it's just mud and some trees. Like there's no road to the East Coast because it's just impossible. You have to fly or take a boat. It's just literally a quagmire.
Yes.
But you know why he did that. He needed to shape this dream world. He needed to shape this heaven for people to be attracted to. Because what he was doing, he got people to invest a lot of money into essentially non-existing land. So the interest grew by the day, and Gregor set up bond schemes. He raised money amongst banks and convinced many to invest in non-existing land in a non-existing country. It is estimated that these investments of Poyais bonds grew to over £1 billion in today's money.
Ooh.
So hundreds of settlers actually started departing to Poyais. That's where it becomes very interesting, because if there's no settlements, where do people actually go? It's becoming quite a disaster. You have a boat arriving at the Mosquito Shore where people are dressed up who land on this coastline, and there's no settlements. They're expecting something, but there's no settlements at all. There's rains, there's a lot of mosquitoes, a lot of tropical diseases. So in this period, they're trying to find the capital of this supposed nation. The captain has been sent off, this poor guy. Find the settlement that we're supposed to be going towards, because nobody believed that it didn't exist at this moment. They all believed that Poyais was still a country and that it was just a navigation error. So the captain went up and down along the coast, went into the mangrove forest, trying to find the place that they were supposed to go. Another boat actually arrived, and they started having the discussion with the captain, where the captain started telling people, there is no Poyais. I've checked. There's nothing there. Nobody would take his word for it. And then disaster struck. A hurricane hit the Mosquito Shore. Their boats were wrecked. Their supplies were completely gone. And people started dying one by one. Mostly because of the tropical diseases. Luckily, for at least some of them, the British Royal Navy found them and evacuated the survivors. And they stopped 5 more ships that year heading to Poyais.
Poof. And that's where it gets... I mean, before it sounded like, okay, this is a lot of harmless way of getting up in life, right? It's just a man trying to get up in life, and he's lying and scheming to do it. I mean, that's basically what capitalism is founded on, like men making up stories and making investments and stuff like that. But here's where it got dark, because then, he sent families to the space to their deaths, basically.
And that's what it is as well. These people that were on these boats were mostly elderly people and families with young children.
Yeah.
So these people weren't really adept with farming, because what Gregor described was a utopian nation where wealth and fertile lands were for the taking. So the people that went there, they saw an opportunity where they didn't see that opportunity in the country where they came from. So it was horrible as it is. Those people that landed on those coasts were people that were also not able to survive in such conditions,
right,
as the Mosquito Shore actually was.
And they didn't go there as colonialists either, which is another thing. I think a lot of people might hear the story who are from like those countries, like as native to those countries, and might say, well, they got what was coming to them. Like, why are they coming over here? That's how they did it in the first place, to colonize us. But this wasn't a colonizing mission. This was a mission that they thought they were investing in something that was actually legitimate, right? They thought it was the person from that country who had a utopian country where the people were doing well, and they were coming to invest in that space. So I didn't think they go over there for the same means as a lot of people might think people are coming into the New World for, in terms of like, we just want to get what we want and force people out. They thought the country settled, things are going great, and we're going to go and invest in whatever that is and start our life there. And that's what makes it a little bit like sad for me. The colonial history is there, but also the idea that these were just people trying to, as you say, older people trying to coming to the end of their life, trying to retire and trying to live out the rest of their life, and with children. I'm sure a lot of children died.
It was basically British people nowadays going to Spain and just chill, have a good time and chill.
Right, land for retirement. And children is what I'm saying, and children who had nothing to do with this. So that's where he moves from a, happy-go-lucky man or a mercenary trying to make it up into the world into somebody who is doing incredible harm to innocent people. So.
Yeah, and very much on purpose. He knew that he was sending boats to a place where those people would likely perish.
Do you think he was hoping that they would make it work and then he would take credit for it? Like, do you think it was just the initial scam of I'm no longer gonna care about it? Or was it I'm gonna scam them, also secretly hoping that they make it work, so now I look good?
Well, I have the answer to this question, because when the news broke in London, angry mob with raised fists were searching for Gregor MacGregor, but he was nowhere to be found. Before people started searching for him, he already fled from London. So that gives us a little bit of a hint that he very much
he knew,
and he didn't care much.
Yeah.
So now I'm describing him like this. We'll see whether we think about him the same way at the end of this episode. But he was very amoral in that sense.
Paye sounds a lot like payaso.
Yeah, village. Yeah, like person of the clown.
Clown. Were you about to say village idiot?
Yeah, but clown works better.
Maybe we should actually Google Translate what it means, if there's any meaning whatsoever to that.
Maybe.
But maybe he did know that. That's so interesting. What if he did know that and that was his joke? And what's his last name? Strange ways. Like, he knew the joke of it all, and it was like his own inside joke. So he takes the payaso and turns it into a country.
It sounds like país and payaso. It sounds like a mixture of the two words, which really is country and clown.
Great observation, Joe. Great observation.
So clown country.
Clown country. I don't know. It's probably a coincidence. I'm sure he just came up with this randomly.
Because he wrote a whole book, right? Didn't he?
He wrote a whole book about this supposed country.
This utopian country.
Yeah.
And he was so he had a great imagination. I don't think he did these things by accident. I think we should give this man credit. And you might have stumbled on one of the genius of this man. I really do.
Well, I'll describe a little bit of how far his convincing power actually went with this book, amongst other things. So he fled England and settled in Paris, where he was actually made an advisor of Latin American affairs. Because nobody ever could accept that Poyes wasn't real. The lie was just too good to be true.
So wait a second. He said that he had this country. I missed this. Did he say he was the president or that he was an ambassador?
Yeah, he was the sovereign.
He was the sovereign.
Yeah.
Did no one ever question, hey, why is the sovereign of this country working with the French ministry, like, as an employee? Like, why, A, how does he have this much time? B, shouldn't this be beneath him?
What we don't know exactly, because he's been referred to as the envoy of the country multiple occasions.
Okay, so that's just ambassador, right? Because that's what I thought.
Yeah, it could very well be that he was presenting himself in Paris as an envoy of Poyes.
Yeah. Right. And maybe his thing was like, in different spaces I have different associations with this country, right? At first he was a sovereign, and then at another part he's an ambassador, and another part, but he's still squeezing that country, that fake country for all that it's not worth.
Yeah. So in Paris, he actually started a new bond scheme, but that failed. But again, he got away with it scot-free.
Scots free. The Scots is free.
Oh my God.
So he blamed his French partners and he got away with it again. So he returned to London, surprisingly, and somehow got more bonds for £800,000.
Wow.
I don't know how. I still don't understand this part of the story because there were angry mobs searching for him. But somehow he could return and convince more people, banks, to give him the money that he needed. But so in 1838, Gregor's wife, Josefa, died. This was the moment that he gave up on his lie and sailed back to Caracas in Venezuela. And he never ever mentioned Poyes ever again. With Bolivar gone, because you might still remember that he had a mark on his head, no one really wanted to kill Gregor anymore because Bolivar wasn't as popular these days anymore. And nobody wanted to kill this random Scottish dude anyhow. So he arrived, and somehow, being Gregor, as we've seen throughout this whole story, managed to get into high society again. So he managed to get an audience with the government. I don't know how he does it, but there he was, having an audience with the government, and there was a person, Carlos, who coincidentally was in MacGregor's campaign when he escaped from Ucumare.
So good references, eh?
He managed to help this guy stay alive. So Carlos didn't know about any of the other bad things, amoral things that Gregor had ever done. And he actually reinstated Gregor's rank in the army, handed over 25 years of payback, and gave him a generous pension. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Damn, man. Yeah.
Yeah. Talk about like a backup plan.
Jeez. A backup plan that he didn't even know he had until he got back there.
This guy was, in that sense, also incredibly lucky. But coming across a person a random soldier that he saved many years ago during a campaign where he showed the one heroic thing that he did in his entire life, and it was heroic. But somehow this person was there at the right time and only knowing about the good thing that Gregor has ever done in his life. and he reaped all the benefits from it.
Can I add one more thing to make it worse? Like, because this is like poetic injustice. So did you read about the Panic of 1825? Which is, so during this whole time period, the Bank of England was, investing a lot into Latin America, especially Poyais or whatever. And this was the first market crash in history not attached to a war. So like a lot of economists say, it's like the birth of the modern economic cycle of boons and recessions. So this guy, back in 1825, affected what now was essentially like the 200 years of financial history,
Yeah.
Wow.
Gregor.
Yeah.
Gregor.
Because £800,000 in the 1820s
was a lot of money.
Wait, so what happened to that money though? Like, did he lose that money? Which is,
I guess. Actually.
How do you lose? I'm so confused.
It's a good question.
In a time when like very little people had that.
I think what probably happened is that he accumulated a lot of debts to investors and etc. that he probably paid this off to. Like, I'm sure that like not everyone let him go scot-free. So if you want to keep playing the system, like some people need to be rewarded along the way.
I think he might have paid some banks back, but it's not recorded in history what actually happened with this fortune.
Did he go bankrupt, or
it might be some buried in Mosquito Shore.
You're in my mind. You're in my brain. It's like they should do a hunt for Gregor's treasures. That would be great.
So what happened after he met Carlos and got all these benefits is that Gregor MacGregor lived 7 more wealthy years and died peacefully with military honor.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's how that story ends.
So We have a person who died without having ever repented for his deeds. Not a second in his life did he have to say sorry what he's done
Publicly.
You think he would have done it to himself?
I think I mean, we don't know what a person might have done in the, we don't know what kind of regrets. Again, we don't know what happened to the money. You know what I'm saying? And I'm just wondering, not that that's why he deserved this. I'm not saying that, but he hadn't publicly ever said anything. But I don't know if he ever felt terrible, because he didn't go back. He let go Paes. And this cash cow that he had, he let it go after his wife died. So I don't know what kind of stuff inside of him that he went through. And he never scammed again, at least according to the story. So I don't know.
Okay.
So what do you think is the takeaway of this story? What is the point for you?
Yeah, so it's a very difficult one, I think, because it feels like a very unfair story. But I think one of the takeaways that I see is the world definitely isn't fair, especially when people make use of hopes and dreams of other people. And people aren't definitely always what they seem or who they seem. So don't ever just follow anyone without questioning it. Because I think that's what happened in this story quite a bit. People wanted to believe him. People wanted to believe the story. And they believed it completely. It was also the period, in this context, it made a lot of sense to believe the things that he was saying. But simultaneously, people gave up their whole life. They gave up everything to move to a place that didn't exist. And for many of them, that cost them their lives. So to me, this story tells that people aren't always what they say they are. And just be mindful that you don't just follow anyone and that there's no place to go back to. We're happy to have stolen your time. Catch us on any of your podcast platforms and see you next week.